Islam may condemn the killing of innocent civilians, but the Muslim Brotherhood didn't get the memo, the Islamists didn't get the memo, and Hamas definitely did not get the memo.
Well, we can debate, by the way, whether in the doctrines of Islam it condemns it. That's for another discussion. But I'm surprised that the Queen didn't say that all of the Hamas guys were actually Mossad agents and it was all a Zionist plot, because that's usually the response that I get whenever I share evidence. And that's why, and I know we're going to talk about it later, but that's one of the reasons why I felt very pessimistic a few days ago when I put out the tweet, because, part of being a human being is to at least being committed to some sense of shared meaning, right? That most people will enter any particular issue with some kind of intellectual honesty, right? But there is no amount of evidence that I can offer some interlocutors whereby they say, yeah, okay, I concede, right? So here are some of the responses I've gotten on social media. October 7th never happened. It's an entire Zionist Jew plot. Okay, it did happen, but it wasn't much. Okay, it did happen fully, but it's a perfectly justifiable retaliation for 75 years of mystery. So at no point is there any conceding of the fact that this was a horrifying act, period. And then we could talk about geopolitical issues. Now, let me compare that to how I responded when I saw 1,500 young Muslim men being led to the shores of the Euphrates River by ISIS and being put summarily bullets in their head. I was angry. I was enraged. My calculus was one that transcends my religious heritage. I was angry that 1,500 young men were being killed. I didn't link it to any geopolitical issues. It ended there. If only the Queen had that kind of courtesy towards the Jews.
It's so true, Gad. I mean, I see these videos on Twitter, on X, regularly now of these young Palestinian children suffering in the wake of the Israeli response. And I have two reactions to it. Number one, horror. And it's, you recoil at the sight of these children suffering. And number two, I quickly have to wonder whether it's real, because Hamas regularly puts out fake propaganda in order to bolster its side. I'm not saying children haven't died and aren't suffering there, but I don't trust anything coming from them and their propaganda masters. But I do put the suffering of the children that I do know is happening on Hamas. That's where I put it. It's on Hamas. What did they think was going to happen? And especially, where is Queen Rania? And she's just she's the face of today's discussion, but there are so many who feel as she does, who have been denying and downplaying on the fact that Hamas uses children as human shields. They make sure that they are in civilian centers when Israel is going to respond. Israel does what it can, everything it can, to make sure civilians aren't in harm's way. And yet the condemnations take none of that into account. None. Because what? It's agenda driven, because it's really about the evil Israel, the evil Jews.
Indeed. I mean, look, think of it this way. On October 7th, a terrible reality occurred. So at that point, you would think if there ever was an event that might galvanize global support for the Jews, that would be the event, right? 1,400 plus people were murdered, raped, butchered, decapitated. We can debate about the exact numbers. But yet what has happened since that day? It has galvanized Jew hatred. That's why I became pessimistic, because there is no cause and effect relationship. You would think most decent people, notwithstanding that they may have different positions on the geopolitics of Israel versus Palestine, could take the individual event of October 7th and say, no, that's beyond the pale. As a human being, I'm going to condemn it. Period. Nothing else stated. Well, in the past 2 weeks, we've only seen a growing rise of Jew hatred. I didn't go just tell you a quick personal story, because oftentimes these situations are best felt when someone shares their personal anecdotes. Last Friday, I had a departmental meeting, Megyn, at my university. I didn't go to it because of security reasons. On Saturday, I had an open house that I had to attend. I didn't go to it for security reasons. Now, in the 21st century, should a Canadian professor feel very tepid about going to do his job as a professor? That's what we're now dealing with in the West.
Because the messaging now has shifted, not so much in America, though we've seen these college students and so on, but around the world, it's shifted almost immediately to global condemnation of Israel. Case in point, the UN Secretary General yesterday in a shocking statement that caused a backlash immediately from the Israeli representatives. And the UN can't stand Israel. It's never been able to stand Israel. The Human Rights Council is a joke. Syria is on it. It's like, what more do we need to say? And so the UN Secretary General gets out there, Antonio Guterres, and says the following.
Nothing can justify the deliberate killing, injuring, and kidnapping of civilians or the launching of rockets against civilian targets. All hostages must be treated humanely and released immediately and without conditions. It is important to also recognize the attacks by Hamas did not happen in a vacuum. The Palestinian people have been subjected to 56 years of suffocating occupation. They have seen their land steadily devoured by settlements and plagued by violence, their economy stifled, their people displaced, and their homes demolished. Their hopes for a political solution to their plight have been vanishing. But the grievances of the Palestinian people cannot justify the appalling attacks by Hamas, and those appalling attacks cannot justify the collective punishment of the Palestinian people.
Collective punishment, which is a war crime, that we continue to hear leveled against Israel as it mounts its response, doing everything within its power to not punish civilians, as we just discussed. For the record, the Israeli UN ambassador responded to what we just saw as follows.
When you say those terrible words that these heinous attacks did not happen in a vacuum, you are tolerating terrorism. Secretary General must resign, because from now on, every day that he is here in this building, unless he apologizes immediately, today we called him to apologize, there's no justification to the existence of this building.
So, Gad, I'm not that into UN politics. We know what the UN's about at this point, but I am interested in what you were saying, that you as a Jewish man in Canada are feeling unsafe right now. We've heard it from a lot of our Jewish friends here in America. And when you get a message from somebody with his title, because the UN Secretary General is a title that many people would listen to and might respect if they hadn't done their deep dive, it's not helpful, right? He's basically saying it's Israel's fault. If you look at his full remarks, it's the fault of the Jews, and the Jews really need to stop retaliating because it's going to make them more morally culpable than the Palestinians.
Yeah, so a couple of things to say. Number one, I announced a game a few days ago. I called it 6 Degrees of Jew. So I list any calamity, and in 6 or fewer causal steps, you have to link it to the Jew. And so I played that game with some people. And, of course, I do it, using my satire and so on, but it's deathly serious because people are able to link everything to the Jew. So, for example, if there's now been open border immigration in the West that has created a lot of instability in our societies, that has led to huge Jew hatred in the West, people won't blame those who are actually engaging in the Jew hatred. They'll say, but it was Jews that were behind the open border immigration policy. I'll just give you one other example, and then I want to talk about something that happened to me in Canada regarding Jew hatred. There's been, as you probably know, Megyn, in Britain, a industrial scale level rape of young British girls up and down England. And 99% of the ones who were engaging in these noble acts of undocumented lovemaking were of one particular faith, right? So when I shared that, and I just said, I used the Socratic method. I said, what is common to all those people? Then tons of people replied in all sorts of ways saying, yeah, but who let those people in? It was the Jews. It's George Soros's open door policy, open societies. So even when Ahmed rapes, it's Mordechai that's to blame. So when you have that kind of orgiastic cognitive Jew hatred, it's impenetrable.
Health insurance is broken. Premiums are increasing, deductibles getting larger, claims denials are becoming more and more common. The headache of health insurance is exactly why Crowd Health was created. It's not health insurance, it's a way to pay for health care through crowdfunding. Crowd Health is doing things differently, and they take care of you. If the insurance companies do not give you the peace of mind you need, you could try Crowd Health. That's why your $50 a month membership includes the tools and services you need to get the highest quality healthcare. You'll get access to telemed visits, discounted prescriptions, and so much more. Plus, you will have access to your own personal care advocate. And of course, you will join the crowd, a group of members just like you who want to help pay for each other's unexpected medical events. You could opt out of restrictive health insurance plans and let Crowd Health assist with your healthcare needs. Get started today if you're interested for just $50 a month. Use code MK to try it. Check it out. Crowd Health is not insurance, and learn more about it at joincrowdhealth.com. That's joincrowdhealth.com, code MK. Hey, thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.